Hello and welcome to another episode of Her Entrepreneurial Rise, the podcast where we amplify the stories of women and gender-expansive leaders using entrepreneurship as a force for social change. Because their stories aren't just inspiring, they're blueprints for what's possible when equity leads the way. I'm your host, Kelen Tamurian, and I could not be more excited to introduce today's guest, Stephiney Foley, founder and CEO of Yuzi Care. Yuzi Care is an AI-driven postpartum care platform, reimagining how we care for new parents during the vital postpartum period. At the heart of Yuzi Care is a commitment to compassionate, holistic, and accessible support that honors the physical, emotional, and mental needs of birthing people. Yuzi Care mobilizes the power of AI to deliver personalized postpartum support tailored to the unique needs of every family. From pregnancy and planning, to birth and the hospital stay, to early postpartum and beyond, Yuzi Care ensures parents are connected and matched with the right care and support plan to truly serve their needs. Their network of trusted, culturally responsive providers, including postpartum doulas, night nurses, lactation consultants, and newborn care specialists, offers holistic, in-home care that nurtures physical recovery, emotional well-being, newborn feeding and sleep, and the transition into family life. On the back end, providers get modern tools to run their business, streamlining scheduling, invoicing, and care documentation. Central to Yuzi Care's mission is the belief that postpartum is not just about surviving, but thriving, and Yuzi Care is committed to serving as a trusted partner every step of the way. With many services eligible for HSA, FSA, or insurance reimbursement, Yuzi Care is making high-quality, culturally responsive postpartum support more accessible to all families. I'm honored to be in conversation with Stephiney today and excited to spotlight how she's harnessing entrepreneurship through Yuzi Care to drive meaningful, lasting social change. So let's welcome Stephiney to the podcast. Hi, Stephiney. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such a
Yeah,
pleasure.
of course. So to kind of just jump right in, I'm curious to know what inspired you to create Yuzi Care.
Yeah, my journey into building Yuzi Care is deeply personal. It came out of my own lived experience. After giving birth, I experienced postpartum depression after my second kid, and I felt like I had fallen through the cracks of healthcare system, to be honest. And I felt intensely cared for during my pregnancy, but I almost disappeared after I left the hospital. And I was lucky to have the support that I did, but even then, I still did not feel like there was the institutional support that I needed or felt heard in ways that I needed. So that experience really stayed with me, as a mom, a veteran, and someone who has worked in high pressure environments like Tesla, Amazon, and IDEO. I realized that mothers are expected to recover from the most physical and emotionally intense event of their lives in isolation with very little structure or systemic support. And that's really unacceptable. So, Yuzi Care was born out of that gap, out of wanting to make sure no other mother feels invisible in the most vulnerable chapter of their lives.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think this is what I love about being able to talk to entrepreneurs that are building businesses for social change out of personal lived experience, because I think that there's nothing more powerful than recognizing that there's a gap in a system or in an environment that you've personally experienced so that you know what is it that actually needs to change or what actually needs to be done to ensure that everyone, whether they share the same background as me or not,
Yeah.
have all of the tools that they need to succeed in this stage of their life, if we're talking specifically about postpartum, but also beyond in other kind of entrepreneurial ventures as well. I think that that's such a powerful example of what's possible when we leverage our lived experiences to create something that has the power to enhance the lives of not only ourselves, but those around us. And to your point about kind of you had a support system with your family and other people in your life to kind of help you move through this stage, and it was still really hard. And so acknowledging that as well and thinking about, okay, even for those of us that do have a pretty robust support system, there's still so much more that needs to be done. So it's really inspiring that you stepped in to kind of fill that gap and are still iterating on that today in terms of evolving Yuzi Care's platform. So to kind of dive into how Yuzi Care's platform works, I recognize that you've chosen to leverage AI at the heart of Yuzi Care. And I'm curious why this was important to you and what does technology, especially AI-driven personalization, unlock when it comes to reimagining and not just improving maternal health care?
Yeah, technology, AI or other types of technology, IoT, I don't think it's not just a tool. It's a way to unlock access, personalization, and scale, especially maternal care that has been overlooked and has been invisible, that it simply hasn't been possible before. So if you think about it, postpartum, even like every birth and postpartum experience and journey looks very different for every family. Some might need lactation support, some might need mental health care, and others might need, some just need sleep or some like dietary support. Traditional healthcare is not set up to deliver that kind of personalization. AI allows us to listen, to learn, and match families with the right care plan and come up with the right providers and care plan in real time. And it makes families heard, parents' voices heard. It's not just mom or and the birthing person. I think it's the partners too. And
Totally.
for me, it's not just about improving the system that we have. It's really about reimagining it. AI gives us that ability to create something entirely new, a maternal care infrastructure that's responsible, equitable, and scalable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's from a interview that I conducted in the previous season with the founder of Aiden, which listeners, you can go back and listen to that one. I'll link it in the show notes. But she shared that there's something like 3 million genetic differences or kind of differences in our DNA between just two people. And so personalized care is the wave of the future, but the way that the healthcare system has been functioning up until now, personalization has been hard to scale, hard to incorporate into kind of the daily workings of how healthcare is administrated. But because recognizing that there are 3 million, something like 3 million plus differences between just two human beings, it's so clear that everybody's needs are going to look different, especially in a time like postpartum where there are so many things that you're trying to navigate in terms of how do I ensure that I keep another living person alive when there's no manual for babies and how to take care of them? And how do I ensure that I'm okay and that I'm getting the right nutrition, that I'm sleeping enough, that I'm learning how to kind of work with my body in this stage where it's, producing milk or if you're the support person and you're not the birthing person, how do I best support the birthing person and my partner in navigating this stage of life? So I think that I love that you're recognizing that AI is not just a tool, but it's actually the key to unlocking a new means of imagining maternal health care and postpartum health care, because it has the power to step in where traditional healthcare hasn't been able to do so, or just hasn't been seen as healthcare traditionally hasn't been seen as personalization hasn't been recognized as something that's possible within the kind of traditional healthcare system. And so I am so inspired by with this, we're all kind of living in this age of AI together and we're seeing how it can really transform so much of our daily processes, but something as personal and as important as navigating starting a family and stepping into that next stage of your life, leveraging AI and recognizing how supportive it can be in this field or in this world is really, really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So to kind of move forward and talk more about Yuzi Care's AI algorithm, I understand that Yuzi Care's AI algorithm matches families with personalized care plans and trusted providers based on their unique needs. So can you walk us through kind of how these care plans differ and how Yuzi Care meets families where they are and ensures that all parents, regardless of resources or disparate needs, have access to meaningful, high-quality postpartum support?
Yeah, I feel like you get it, right? So I think every family comes to us with different circumstances, whether it's resources, cultural expectations, medical needs, or support system, right? And our platform, that's why we're AI driven and not powered. Powering is just, a way to make the experience better. But
Hmm.
we really leverage artificial intelligence to help us create these plans and then also match the providers in a meaningful way. And what does that mean? So for one family, that might mean matching a postpartum doula for overnight support so parents can actually rest. For another, it might mean lactation consultants and et cetera. And I think the other thing to point out is the care navigation piece. I've had so many moms and friends that come up to me. They're like, hey, I really needed this, but I don't even know where to look. And Google is like impossible to sift through, right?
Totally.
And so we try to design the care plans that accounts for what resources they have, like whether if it's FSA or HSA or employer benefits. Like for example, we know a couple of really local companies. Like for example, Microsoft actually provides $1,000 stipend to each employee for per birth, right? So how can we help piece all of that together for the families, just so that they understand financially what the implications are, because access is just as important as the care itself. And our goal is very simple: meet the families where they are, whether they have resources or very few. And I grew up with a single mom in New York City, and I think back to what kind of support I would want my mom to have. Like, I don't think it should differ depending on, the resources should not vary regardless of how much wealth or resources you actually have. And every parent deserves meaningful and high quality support. Yeah. And we're really Yuzi Care is really building the infrastructure to make that possible.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's so just thinking again about like the gravity of the reality of postpartum and recognizing that there are so many elements of care that are necessary to support a healthy baby, a healthy parent, a healthy functioning family system. And that does take a lot of resources. Having a baby is really expensive, and ensuring that you can take care of yourself in the midst of that is also very expensive. So recognizing that and creating the infrastructure to ensure that UC Care can provide families with what they need and really can meet them where they are, whether it's leveraging AI to kind of consolidate, okay, these are the resources that this family has available to them. They have HSA or FSA benefits available, or like you were mentioning, they work for Microsoft. So they have that $1,000 stipend that can be used to support the care plan that AI kind of works to leverage for them and create for them. I think it's so powerful that everything can kind of be, consolidated in that way of like, let's paint the whole picture for what this family has and what they need, and where can we bridge the gap and meet them where they are so that they can succeed and feel the most supported as they move into this next stage of their life. It's really, really awesome.
Thank you.
So to kind of talk more about kind of the disparities in postpartum care and those differences in resources, I want to kind of paint the picture for our audience about some data specifically about women of color in terms of postpartum healthcare and postpartum outcomes in general. So the data is clear that women of color are significantly more likely to experience postpartum depressive symptoms and poor mental health after childbirth when compared to white women's experiences. So to provide context, up to 29 to 44% of Black women report postpartum depressive symptoms, yet they are less likely to be identified and connected to mental health services. Additionally, qualitative studies highlight that high levels of stigma, the existence of barriers to mental health care, and cultural expectations around mental health as roadblocks for women of color in seeking support for postpartum mental health. And even when they do seek support, women of color are less likely to receive proper care, particularly for postpartum depression. In one Medicaid cohort study, among the Black and Latino women in the study who sought out postpartum care, Black women were 34% less likely, and Latina women were 33% less likely to receive proper follow-up treatment and ongoing care. So I understand that Yuzi Care's long-term vision is to build a future where personalized professional postpartum support is accessible to all, no matter your zip code or background. So I want to kind of dig deeper into how Yuzi Care is stepping in to address these disparities across differences of race in postpartum outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, this is really important to me. I think I alluded to in a previous question. I I am an immigrant. Like, I'm in a classified veteran persona or classification, right? I think the US postpartum care can often feel like a luxury. A doula is very expensive in Seattle, for example. And sometimes it feels like it's reserved for people who can afford it. But the reality is maternal care isn't optional. Every family needs the support, whether it's their first child or fifth child, and whether they're living paycheck to paycheck or have every single resource available, right? I mean, I think that's why it's important that we work with existing carriers like Medicaid, TRICARE, and other employers and payers to make sure that postpartum is covered as part of that healthcare journey, and just not just like a nice to have an add on. As a veteran, I've like seen firsthand, and I think like those statistics are not shocking at all. I mean, I know for the military population, like female veterans with previously diagnosed PTSD symptoms are 5 to 10 times more likely to experience postpartum depression,
Mm.
right? And I think it's one of those things that it's I think I would broaden it. It's not just, race definitely has a component to it, but I think we need to look even deeper in terms of like what that person's previous lived experiences are like, right? And I've seen
Absolutely.
firsthand how systems can either leave people behind or lift them up. And with Yuzi Care, we're really committed to building something that doesn't just serve the top, it serves everyone.
Hmm.
Because if we want to change maternal health care outcomes in this country, accessibility has to be at the center. And, this year is the first year that our birth rates have decreased in the United States. I know the current administration actually are incentivizing folks by giving a stipend, a monetary stipend, but that's just a temporary solve. How about we actually go to the root cause of the problem and try to provide better support and infrastructure for our
Hmm.
families, our young families, right? And regardless of who they are and where they come from. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, to kind of provide an all encompassing response here, I think it's so important to recognize that a healthy parent, a healthy mom is a healthy baby, and ensuring that their mental health is accounted for, and not just accounted for, but prioritized, is so crucial to the health of their family unit, but also the health of society as well. Because if you just think about yourself in terms of your mental health on a day-to-day basis, if you're feeling anxious or you're feeling depressed or whatever the case is, it's so much harder to show up actively in your life and contribute meaningfully to school, to work, to your friendships, to your relationships. Like, mental health is the pillar of, in my opinion, it's the pillar of success in all areas of your life. And so to add on the layer of then having to learn how to care for a whole new human being on top of that, when you're navigating hormonal fluctuations and
yep,
the kind of identity shift that
yep,
also comes with stepping into the role as a mom and parent, the fact that mental health care is not prioritized, and if it is, it's only made accessible to the top, like you were mentioning, is completely unfair and unjust. And
yeah,
so Yuzi Care's commitment to ensuring that it's not just available to those at the top, but it's available to everyone, and it accounts for differences in terms of cultural needs and ensuring that everybody can access culturally responsive care
yeah,
as well, is really important. Because again, even though mental health care is a global need, everyone is going to have unique needs based on their lived experiences, like you were mentioning, in terms of if they are a veteran as well, and they have that predisposed disposition to experiencing severe postpartum depression or anxiety, or
yeah.
just poor mental health in postpartum.
I want to say it's not just mental health, right? Like
Hmm.
majority of the maternal mortality occurs in the first year. And a lot of people actually think it happens in the operating room or when they're delivering their baby. But
Hmm.
that's not actually true. It happens during the first year. And that, I became a certified doula, and that's one of the things that we talked about in our training, is that I was shocked when I heard that statistic. And it's because we don't have that infrastructure. We don't have that care. And it's not part of our societal needs. I think a lot of moms actually feel guilty for getting help,
Mm.
right? And I think I really hope like conversations like this would change perception in the next generation of women to say like, hey, like, our society is not made to be a singular entity. We're actually very tribal. Like humans are meant to be tribal creatures, right? Like,
Hmm.
back in the old days, we traveled together in pods and we traveled together in tribes where we had that support system. And now everyone just, retreat back to their own foxhole, and there's not necessarily that built-in support system. And I think that's what makes it hard. And it's not just the mental health. There's
Hmm.
postpartum preeclampsia, there's postpartum hemorrhage, there's a lot of issues that come with it that cause, like you said, even like hormonal imbalances that cause maternal morbidity rate to rise.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And one more thing I want to highlight is that it's not just a public health problem, actually. It's actually an economic problem. So for all the, economists and men out there, right? Like it's not just a women's health issue, it's an economic problem, because if the birth rate keeps declining, that means that productivity will decrease. We don't have the people to support our economy, right? And so we really need to think about this and really prioritize maternal health care.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, we hear the phrase, it takes a village to raise a kid, but then that
Yep.
is actually not actualized in the way that we are conditioned to raise families and to engage with one another. I think,
Yep.
I'm obviously not a mom, but from watching my parents, raise me, and we moved around a lot, and it was kind of a solitary endeavor. Like, we were moving to new
Mhm.
cities where we didn't know people, and so building that village was difficult, especially when both of my parents were working full-time jobs. But I remember kind of hearing them talk about the difficulty of doing this without a village, and the fact that it's not normalized to ask for help. And like you mentioned, that women sometimes feel shame for doing so. Restructuring the way that we approach maternal care, mental health and physical health, emotional health, all of that beyond, and recognizing that we were never meant to do this alone, and Yuzi Care creating the infrastructure to ensure that parents and moms don't have to is so important. And also, to your point too about, like, it's not just mental health, but also recognizing the hormonal shifts and imbalances, preeclampsia, all of those things are also so important to take into account, especially too when you think about the disparities in race as well, because of the long and sordid history of racial discrimination and experimentation in the medical field, and the realities of distrust with traditional means of administering healthcare. I think Yuzi Care stepping in to recognize that there are those cultural needs, and we have to take into account everybody's unique lived experience and ensure that we can create a plan for postpartum and maternal care that is addressing their mental health and physical health needs in a way that ensures that the mom and families feel safe and supported is so important. And I'm really inspired by the way that you and your team are taking all of that into account to build a platform that works for everyone, to address, like you mentioned, this is an economic concern. It's not just a maternal healthcare concern. This is a public health issue, with the addition that it's an economic health issue as well. That, like, if we don't address these needs now, we're all going to suffer in the future, and none of us want that. So from what I can glean from listening to your story, I see Yuzi Care as a vital and innovative component in building a more just and equitable postpartum care ecosystem. And so I'm curious to dive into the nitty-gritty of how you built Yuzi Care, and how those who are inspired by and passionate about maternal and postpartum care can take from your experience and begin their own entrepreneurial journey to engender positive change in a way that feels aligned for them. So, how did you secure early funding or resources to start your venture?
Yeah, on the funding side, I began with scrappiness and storytelling. I put my, I put a little bit of our own money in, like leaned on a small friends and family round, then started pitching to angels, angel investors who understood both health tech and care economy. What really unlocked doors wasn't the perfect deck. It was painting a picture where postpartum care was no longer invisible, but paired with the data that showed, hey, there's actually like a $100 billion like untapped gap in the maternal health care ecosystem. And I think that's really important to, share not just my own stories, but accompany it with data points that this is a really important area to go after, and not just important, but also, a lucrative one, right? I think it's important to highlight that it's a business.
Yeah, like, it's not just the right thing to do, but there's a business case for this as well, that this is
Absolutely.
an investment in the future for everyone.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of build on that, and I think you were kind of alluding to this as well in terms of, like, communicating about the problem. How did you go about building a team or support network to bring your mission to life? And how did you speak about the problem and your vision to get others to believe in it and want to be a part of the solution that you were creating?
Yeah, I think as for the team, I built it around trust and alignment with the mission again. right? Like my first hires and advisors weren't just people with impressive resumes, although they are very impressive, but they were people who believed in changing the current status quo and willing to roll up their sleeves, open up their networks, provide the time and talent that they had. Over time, I layered in operator, technologists, care professionals who could balance the heart with the execution. And I also built a very strong network outside the companies through mentors from my alma maters, West Point, Dartmouth, and other founder ecosystems who would give perspectives when things got really, really hard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think connecting with those that have, been connected with you in previous stages of your life as well, know you and know how you are willing to kind of roll up your sleeves and connect the heart with the mission and the hard work, and then building a team of people that are either from those connections or from those that you've sought out yourself, that
Yeah,
you recognize like we're in this together. We all believe in this mission and we're all willing to roll up our sleeves and do the hard work, because I think everybody knows, if you've, been listening to this podcast, that entrepreneurship is not easy, but it's also not something to shy away from if you are deeply passionate about a social issue or about creating positive social change. This is a surefire way to do that. And Yuzi Care is a prime example of that you're making positive change every single day. And your team is so important to that because you've created a team around this central mission. And so I think that's a great piece of advice to kind of share for people, is that communicating, painting the picture of what the problem is, and really identifying within the individuals that you connect with of like, do you feel this too? Are you passionate about this mission in the same way that I am?
totally, totally.
Yeah. So to kind of wrap up, what advice would you offer to someone with an entrepreneurial mindset and desire to do impactful work and make a change in their community or field?
Oh boy, I think two things. One is start messy, start small, but start. Don't wait until you have every piece figured out. I think life is about A/B testing and really trial and error, right? Talk to the people that you want to serve, build with them, not just for them. Anchor yourself in a problem. Surround yourself with people who care as much about the mission as you do, because that will carry you through really, really tough days. I think the second piece is just, you know, if there is a problem that you cannot stop thinking about, really, really listen to your gut, right? I think I feel like that has been my guiding compass. I call it my spidey sense, right? Like sometimes my spidey sense will be like, "Oh, that might not be the right hire." I always listen to it. Or like, that might not be the best partnership or, product direction. Obviously, use data to really validate it, but like, trust your gut. I think we talked a lot about lived experiences on this podcast. There's a reason why we're here, and leverage your lived experience and to, guide you on where you need to be.
Yeah, I love that advice. I think to your first point about not just, or one of your first points, not just building for, but with. And I think with what you just said as well about like leveraging your lived experiences, use your lived experiences as much as you can, but also recognizing where you might have blind spots. Like you might not have experienced
Totally.
this one aspect. And so how can I leverage my team, or how can I bring someone into the fold who has
Yeah,
experience in my blind spot to help build the most robust and comprehensive solution to ensure that
totally.
everybody's needs are met? And then to your second point about like trusting your gut and leveraging your lived experiences to know that like you know more than you think you know, and trusting that because you believe so deeply in the mission and you're so connected to it, that you are going to be leading with your best foot forward and making decisions that do make sense. And then of course, like you said, validating with data as well is really important. But I think with entrepreneurship and the fact that there's no manual for it, everybody approaches it differently. That's why I love asking these questions. But entrepreneurship is in largely a game of chance in a lot of ways. And you can use data to kind of reaffirm the decisions that you make. But it is kind of, like you said, of A/B testing, and trusting your gut has to be a big component of that. Because if you, like you said, have this problem that you can't stop thinking about, there's a reason why you went for it. You trusted that this problem was something that other people were experiencing too, and it was important enough to go after it. So staying with that and using that as kind of your guiding force of my gut knows what is right and I can move forward and work with my team to help build the solution and use data to affirm that we're moving in the right direction. I think that's wonderful advice and something that I will definitely be taking forward in all aspects of my life. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today. It was such a joy to talk to you and to hear more about your experience. I can't wait to stay connected with Yuzi Care and see where you grow and go from here. I know it's going to be to big places. So thank you again for coming on. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Her Entrepreneurial Rise podcast. The Her Entrepreneurial Rise podcast was founded, hosted, and produced by me, Kelen Tamurian, president of the We Lead Student Board, with support from the Burke Center for Entrepreneurship in the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. I'm so grateful to have you along for these conversations, amplifying the stories of impact-minded women and gender-expansive innovators whose ventures and life's work shine a bright light on the radical possibility of entrepreneurship as an engine for positive social impact. If you'd like to learn more about the entrepreneur or leader featured in this episode, their journey, business, and mission, be sure to check out their website and social media platforms, all linked in the show notes. There you'll also find a list of the statistics, articles, and resources mentioned in this conversation for your further research and exploration. To stay connected with the Her Entrepreneurial Rise podcast and the Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Program at the Burke Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Washington, follow us on social media and visit our website, both linked below. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and share the podcast with a friend, classmate, or fellow believer in the power of entrepreneurship to spark positive change. Your support truly means the world and is the best way to help grow the show. I'm so happy you're here and part of the Her Entrepreneurial Rise community. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.